Hey, Tommy,
Hey, Rusty,
you ever hear Off the Top Media?
is that the podcast on YouTube and Twitch?
It is. It's a podcast, and they do reviews of
AEW, WWE.
I think they even review movies and books and stuff too.
What?
Yeah, like everything. They do a little of everything.
That's amazing.
It is amazing, and like a lot of wrestling. A lot.
Well, that's good because we love wrestling.
I love wrestling. We should check them out sometime.
Let's go do it.
All right.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to Spotlight with Shadow. Today I'm joined by what I consider my Scott Hall to my Kevin Nash, the Will Gray, along with two up-and-coming superstars in the indie scene, Rusty Blackwell and Tommy McCloud. How are you gentlemen today?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Hey, glad to have you. I mean, we've been talking about this for a minute, so I'm glad to finally get you guys on. So, as guys in the independent scene in Canada, tell me, what's it like for you guys in your experience, and how are you enjoying it?
First, do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I enjoy it a lot. I know that, we live, like I live in Sturgeon Falls, Ontario, which is, 40 kilometers outside of North Bay and 100 kilometers outside of Sudbury. So it's not really close to anything, if you can believe that. And I'm very lucky to say that I probably get about one match a month or so in this region, and now I've started to travel a little bit outside and get more once in a while, and that's awesome. And I'm lucky. We're lucky that we have some companies, especially Northland in our area, to help us get matches, because they're a lot of fun. But without them, I don't know if we'd get a lot of ring time here, right? So there's that in the indies aspect of like living in remote communities. I mean, maybe if we lived in Toronto or something like that, like there'd be a lot more opportunities. But Tommy, what do you think?
Well, Rusty's got a point with like us being in the more northern area. It limits a lot of like where we can wrestle. But with like Northland and I haven't wrestled for, but Rock Solid and companies that shall not be named, we've been able to sort of get our name out there, whether or not it's meeting people, helping them tear down, set up the ring. It's been an experience on be able to get your name out there, and it's definitely been really cool to be able to travel like down to Durham area to do matches with Northland, and it's awesome.
Right. And like when you guys were here in my town, it was like I've mentioned to previous colleagues of yours, it was fun. It's a very entertainment, very family oriented, whether you want to believe that or not, that's up to you. Unfortunately the show didn't end as planned when you guys were here, but it was hella fun, and I can't wait till you guys come back. I mean, my daughter, you both met her. It was her birthday that day, and she enjoyed it. She's just loving the wrestling scene, and it's so awesome to see refreshing breath in wrestling in general. Anything you would like to add in, Will? You want to ask? Maybe you got a question you want to ask?
So one of my favorite questions when I do interviews, I always do them in 3 segments. The first part I always do is kind of an origin story. And I always say that growing up in, I was telling you before, the hotbed of the JCP territory at the end of the NWA, beginning of WCW days, late 80s, early 90s, I grew up in the very end of the territories. What were you guys exposed to in Canada? What did you grow up watching?
With me, I didn't really start. I didn't really begin watching wrestling until like 2016, 2017. So I'm more of a more recent decade fan. And actually, my first ever live event I seen was I don't know what company it was for, but I think the main event was my coach. So my first ever actual live event, it was awesome to be able to go out and watch my coach wrestle, and then be able to go train with him 6 or 7 years later. And watching, I think, a lot more in the era of 2016, 2017 is more my the time I guess I watched through.
Well,
I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but
it's pretty good.
Hey, it's the raw answer, right? So
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'll help Tommy out a bit by saying when I met Tommy the first time was during training with Dan Jarris at NRGY Pro Wrestling Academy. And one of the first things that Dan said was to pull out his phone and show a photo of Tommy at one of the wrestling events when he was a kid, showing up. And that was at like when Dan took over Northland, that was like his first Northland show that he did. And Tommy's like this child there. And that was Tommy's first wrestling show. And he was like, I want to be a wrestler. And now he is. So that's kind of wild. Even though you're talking about like television influences, I'm like, I feel like maybe local influences helped you with
exactly,
that too.
Yeah.
I know this like dates my age a little bit because I'm not young, but I was about 6 years old. In 1985, and I know that Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan, as people have had all kinds of controversy and problems. But when you're 6 years old and you're watching wrestling, you don't think about those kind of things. And Hulk Hogan was kind of a big deal for me when I was young. And I, like many of us, I also think, and this is one of those strange things where when I got asked when I started training, like who were your big wrestling fans when you were a kid? I'm like, I was always a huge Iron Mike Sharp fan. And that's like, even as a kid. And it's because he was a jobber who was coming out every week and just putting other guys over. But he was always introduced as like, what was it? It was like the strongest man in Canada or something along like those lines. But it was like this strange title, but it always was about Canada. And meanwhile, it was like this Canadian wrestler on like this American television show that was just present all the time. And I kept watching him lose and kept waiting for him to win as a child, like all the time, thinking, no, he'll beat somebody, he'll win, not realizing like what's going on because you're just too young. Anyway, I watched WWE and WCW, and then I lost track of wrestling probably in my mid to late 20s, just because I was, getting into work and life and things like that. And now, it's all full circle. I'm coming back to it. So it's really exciting to be part of it again, we'll say, and to learn what I missed. Yeah.
So with that being said, because Will asked your origin stories, so let me deep dive a little bit more into that. And if you don't want to disclose this is perfectly fine, because I understand how it works. But let's pull the curtain back. What inspired your gimmicks?
Do you want to start, Tommy, or do you want me to? I've got a huge answer for that.
You can go first.
So I've had multiple gimmicks before wrestling, which sounds weird, but I've been an artist for years, so I've actually done like promo work without being a wrestler as Bulk Logan, which is like a Hulk Hogan knockoff because I'm a big fat guy with blonde hair, and then I got into training and. I started talking with Dan, who's, training us at the time about like, what about this name or what about this name? And it's sort of like bouncing things off of each other and it's collaborative. And, when I was training, Dan referenced, Jerry Blackwell, the Mountain from Stone Mountain, as sort of like someone who I wrestle like. He's not really the fastest guy, but he's kind of like this immovable force. Also not the biggest guy, but he acts like he's the biggest guy, and that's it's like an attitude thing. I really felt influenced heavily by the 70s. So when I was putting names forward, at first I wanted to be like Bill Chainsaw, and Dan was like, that's a terrible name, and I thought I was going to be like this tough heel, and everyone's like, you're so polite and kind in real life. Do you really think you're going to be able to handle like kids hating you in public? And no, I'm not. I'm too nice. This is how it is. I do heel work once in a while if I'm needed, like we all do. But my heart's with like making people happy. So I gave him this huge list of names. There was all kinds of stuff, and then he was looking at it and he said, I see the name Rusty showing up in here frequently. Why are you putting that name forward so much? And my father, who's passed away, his name was Russell and his nickname was Rusty. So Dan came back saying, why don't you do something like Rusty Blackwell or something like the Backwoods Butcher, because that's in there. And I just saw that message he sent, like Rusty Blackwell, the Backwoods Butcher. I'm like, done. That's so like the whole thing, both. And he's like, both. Okay. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. So like thinking about like my father and kind of what he meant to me being like larger than life, thinking about Jerry Blackwell and his wrestling style. And then also thinking about like Mad Dog Vachon and Butcher Vachon, who were like, other big 70s wrestlers. Like the Butcher title gets used a lot, but at the same time, like I'm in Sturgeon Falls, so I'm kind of backwoods a bit. So we'll just leave it like that. And I'm aware that other people have used the title Backwoods Butcher as well. So it's not like, it's, how do I say it? It's like,
there's been
Rusty
like 5
Blackwell.
Nature Boys, Rusty. I get it. Yeah.
Right. I love that. And it's a great homage to your father, and it takes a lot to, like I said, it takes a lot to pull back that curtain for people to understand the gimmick, and I appreciate that. So Tommy, what brought Tommy McCloud as the gimmick?
It's a much shorter answer than Rusty's. Excuse me, sorry, but it's also along the lines of I guess throwing ideas towards Dan, and Dan not really like bouncing them back, more just deflecting them out of the air and calling them stupid. But I think I didn't really know what I wanted when I went into naming myself. I knew I had like the most generic name in like the wrestling games growing up, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I was not even going to try to use that one. So I think I wanted to use something along the lines of like the initials TM, so I could do the dumb trademark thing. But I realized afterwards that was stupid. And I think it was either like TM, AM. I think I was just trying to do something like that. And I pitched the idea, I think Anthony McCloud, to Dan. He's like, no, that's stupid. And he's like, what about Tommy McCloud? And I thought about it because Tommy's my middle name, so I liked it. It worked really well in the sense of being able to. It is me. It's who I am, right? So Tommy McCloud has always been me in a way.
Yeah, like you said, not very long. So I like that. But no, it's like I was saying to Rusty, it's cool when you can dive into what the gimmick is, because I mean, obviously Rusty has personal connection to it, like, which is huge, and you using, like you said, your middle name. So I mean, it just brings some reality into the world of fiction, right? So, and most people enjoy that when they can connect with people that way. And I mean, from my understanding with both of you, very much people, at least at shows. I don't know, maybe you're introvert when you're home, I don't know, but when you're out and about, I mean, it's great. You take the time, you talk to people. Just a few minutes ago, before we started speaking about the gimmicks, I stood up and I reached for something. I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit, and both these gentlemen were there that day, and my daughter loves this, but they signed this poster for my daughter.
Oh yeah.
And it was a little happy birthday message to her. She put it up, and she puts it on my shelf. As you see behind me, it's a whole thing. So that's the shelf where she decided she wanted it. So it stays there. And I'm incredibly grateful. Even we're not talking about him, and I mentioned this in the interview with him. Even Josh, much of a heel as he is, he pulled back the curtain for 3 seconds to take a picture with her. She loved that. But that segues into my next question, and it's more geared towards Tommy for a second. This past weekend, you had a big match with Dan.
Yes.
How was that for you, knowing you were his last opponent?
Well, I went into it extremely nervous because I knew Dan was going to throw everything he had at me, right? So I will say that the nerves got to me midway through the match. So I don't think I put my best performance on. I think I definitely could have gave Dan a better fight than I gave him. But it was extremely honoring, and being able to say I was his last opponent after being able to take that picture with him 6 years ago in the middle of the Northland ring. I don't know if it's the same ring, but the same ring. And it's awesome to be able to I won't say full circle, but I guess you could say full circle in the sense of, I think that might have been Dan's return match, actually, the match I seen. So to see his first return match and to be able to be part of his last match was it was really honoring, honestly.
So that's going to enter my next question, because I know the results of that match. And full Tommy right now, do you have a message for Josh for ruining what was a great match between you and Dan?
I'm coming for you, Bane. You ruined this. You ruined that moment not only for me, but you ruined it for Dan. And I know Dan may have words for you, but I have fists coming for you.
Tommy,
now,
so
Rusty, with that being said, when the subject of Bane, if you will, you wrestled Bane here in Durham back in July, and I know you guys have a little bit of a history as well. So what's that like with you working with Bane? And because you both started roughly around the same time, right? So
we did. We started training on the exact same day. What I could so there's the little context, because I got to do commentary that day that Tommy and Dan had their match, and it was very hard doing commentary over top of a match where your tag team partner is wrestling the person that trained you, and trying not to, like, obviously I rooted for Tommy. You know, that's kind of like, you know, I don't know how to say it. Is it weird to say that, like, being a tag team partner is like being a 1980s cop where you have to prioritize your partner above everyone else? It's so weird, like, in that way, but it does feel like that. And you know, you took such a beating in that match. Like, you did you fantastic, but you know, when you finally hear the commentary, Tommy, you're gonna hear me say things like, after a move like that, and you know, he kicks out, and I'm like, I almost wanted you to not kicked out just because I don't want you to get hurt anymore. Like, that looked terrible. I mean, like, it looked amazing and looked terrible. Like, I'm proud of you, and I don't know how you walk after these things, because I can't take the punishment you just took, or maybe I can, I don't know, but it looked amazing, and being away from it and having to be not in the sidelines was really hard. Bane, I said this during that match, is like filth and a bully, and I really don't think you should give in to bullies and what they want, and you got to do your best to stand up for yourself and stand up against them. And I think that that's not just in wrestling, that's everywhere. But Bane has been bullying people for a while. I don't know where this is all going to head to, or whether he's going to eventually stop chasing Dan and demanding some sort of match. The thing that a lot of people don't know is that Bane and I started training at the same time, but Tommy had started training before both of us. And the reason why Dan was giving a match to Tommy is that there was supposed to be another match that got canceled because of a COVID outbreak within all the wrestlers. So that he was scheduled to wrestle Tommy, and then that event never happened, and then it never got rescheduled. So then when Dan announced his retirement, he decided to give the match to Tommy that he couldn't give him before because it was already planned. So that idea that Bane feels like he deserves it more is ridiculous, you know. And then I'm you know, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm really happy that so far Bane hasn't got what he wants, even if he's ruined things and also choked me unconscious in front of an audience in Durham. Yeah, sorry to laugh about that, but it's like I when I came to, I actually asked the ref, I'm like, did I win?
I remember that. I was in the front row there, so yeah, I remember that. I am Will Gray can attest to this too. He's been trying to sell me on indie promotions for a while. I mean, I'm more of the mainstream style guy. You know, I pay attention to a lot of it because it's just easier access, especially where we live. It's just a lot easier access.
Yeah.
But like Will can attest, I came home that day from that show, obviously worried about Dan from what happened, but like I was in awe of what you guys did. Like, it was just amazing. I enjoyed every aspect of it. You know, seeing the hard work that you guys take, because it's I can't just get in there and do it. You know, Rusty, you're a big guy like myself, so watching somebody like you do it, I mean, it gives me optimism. I probably will never do it. I'm more of the Paul Heyman guy. I'll talk shit to you all day, and I don't care. But I ain't gonna get in there and get beat up. I'm not that dumb. I'll take some bumps, maybe, but you know, I ain't trying to get thrown around by men smaller than me.
Take a chop or two, maybe.
Maybe.
Well, I'll tell you.
My kids do it to me enough. I'm sure I can handle it.
I'll tell you something, and this is more about being older and getting hurt. It's not just whether you're throwing yourself around. It's also like just trying to keep up with people and knowing how to pace yourself. I recently went to Scotland for another trip, and then I found out there was an indie promotion happening in Scotland and got booked on the show. And I was like, that's cool. I'm going to go wrestle in Scotland. And I showed up on a Wednesday and the show was on the Saturday. And I went to where the guys were training that night because that was the only opportunity I was going to get before the show to see them. And got there, and this is like a completely different level of wrestling. They're very physically fit. They're all like super athletic, and they're all like 20 to 25 years old. And, you know, that's amazing. And I'm not naming them because I don't want people to go and judge them or anything like this. But it's like, anyway, I naively got in and started trying to do some tumbling and immediately dislocated my knee. Like, just immediately got hurt. And it was so embarrassing because I didn't even get a chance to wrestle with them at all. Instead, I got in and just put my knee out full on, and just, you know, I had to set it myself and get out of the ring. And all of a sudden I'm just like, whoa, this is bad. Like, I'm in bad shape. And then I tried to get better for the Saturday, but, you know, the guys don't know me very well. Like, you know, they're like, I don't think it'd be safe for you to get in. You literally dislocated your knee like 3 days ago. And I'm like, you're right, I shouldn't. But it's one of those things of being like, you know, when you're a bigger guy, you have to take care of yourself, and you have to do the things that you know you can do, and you shouldn't be trying to do the things that you know you can't. And I try to do the things I should have known that I shouldn't that I should have known better, you know. And meanwhile, here it is, like, cost me a match where if I would have just said, no, I'm not doing any of that with you young kids, like, what are you talking about? Then I probably would have had a great match in Scotland.
I feel like I hear that phrase a lot from Will Gray when we try to do like podcasts. I'm not doing that with you kids. Yeah. He's the elder statesman. So
I was about to say, Rusty and I aren't far from the same age. So you know, game respects game when it comes to that. Experience over beauty, right? But Rusty, my question for you is, in the American territory system, even in 2023, you still see that skeleton of it. You go to Philadelphia and that 2300 area, the fans still expect you to perform a certain way. You come to Memphis, the Memphis fans still expect you, you know, they still expect Lawler and Hart, you know what I mean? You go to Texas, it's still very Von Erich. In Canada with you guys, does the skeletal remains of the old Stampede days and the Big Cat Wrestling and some of those Canadian like giants from the 80s, do you still feel that with the fans? Do they still crave that indie draw the way they used to?
Absolutely. 100%. And like things that people say, which, you know, because Northland, although Dan has been running it since I want to say 2015 or so. I could be wrong there. It could be a little earlier or later, but that's around when I think he got it up and running. And that's reinventing it after it had been dormant for, I want to say, more than 20 years. But the time period before that, it ran. I want to say like since the 40s. Like, it was one of those really old territories where I remember seeing some documentary about the territory days, and, you know, Vince McMahon taking over syndication and showing the map where it was like showed like a like a paper-based map of the territories. And I remember pausing it and looking at it and seeing Northland Wrestling as like this huge area in Ontario, and I was like, that's interesting. Like, but there's things that happen where we'll go to a show now and somebody that's in their 60s will come or older will come up and be like, I haven't seen you all here since this, and they'll say this year, right? But they're not referencing wrestlers. They're referencing like actually that company because they're thinking it's like that continuity. Where meanwhile, like the continuity's been broken, but it is like this weird nostalgia that people come up with, and then in that same way of like the wrestling style, because I wrestle in sort of like that more traditionalist way. There's a lot there's very little chain wrestling, if there's any. It's very more like big moves, trying to wear someone down and then pin them. When I had my first match as a wrestler, like my very first match, it was very slow. It was very like, point A to point B. There was like, a whole area where me and Tommy, we got ahead at the beginning, and then all of a sudden we started losing, and then we pulled it together. And that's like the story of the match is so basic. And then I had all these old guys in the audience come up and be like, I haven't seen a match that good in 30 years because they're thinking about how that's probably the last time someone wrestled like this. but that it happens, right? Like there is that appetite for era-based wrestling or kind of like the style of the environment or the style of those companies that were there, because those people, if you were in your 20s 40 years ago and you were a huge wrestling fan of that style, and then all of a sudden you see people doing it now, like you're still a fan of it. Like you're just not getting it from other places, right? So Tommy, you got anything to add to that?
Oh. I was going to ask Tommy kind of a follow-up question to it now. As somebody who's, both experience-wise and younger on the actual age gambit, I'm pretty sure you're closer to my kid's age than mine. Do you feel like having a chance to work with somebody like Rusty and Dan and Bane and some of these guys who may not necessarily be a ton older age-wise, but were just old enough to remember it, do you take some of these old school values and mix it with, the young guy approach? If that makes sense at all.
I guess in the sense of I don't really know. It actually depends on, like, you mean just like taking things they've taught you, or like
kind of applying the old school with the new school, blending the two.
I can't really say I have much experience in trying to like blend the two, because like I said, I've watched just mostly really recent wrestling. So a lot of my stuff is just jumping off the ropes and maybe not so much technical, taking them down to the mat stuff like William Regal. But a lot more of my stuff is modern day.
Well, and he says it like that, but I think that a lot of what we do rubs off on you. Like we asked you the other day, like why you're punching with a closed fist, like within the first few minutes of a match, and I'm like, that's a kind of a, we're supposed to be wrestling. You're not supposed to be like street fighting this guy. And then I can't remember what you said, but it's something about being just so damn scrappy, which I don't disagree with, but.
Well, that's a good point.
I'm going to piggyback off Will's question there. Now, Rusty, you've been watching wrestling for decades at this point. Tommy, you've been watching wrestling for almost a decade at this point.
Yeah.
But let me ask, now that you guys are doing it yourselves, are you enjoying the psychology that comes with it? Because, I mean, it's different from watching it. You understand a lot more of what goes into a day-to-day process. I've had a conversation with Dan before where he's very much old school in a sense, but he's trying to be teaching you guys right. So how are you enjoying the psychology of wrestling? Like when you watch WWE or AEW or Impact or whatever it is that you enjoy, when you're watching these matches unfold in front of your eyes, you understand the psychology to it now. So what is that like for you?
Well, it's cool because learning it, you go from just watching two people beating the crap at each other in the middle of the ring, right, to understanding what's going through their minds and why they're doing what they're doing in that exact moment, right? And in the psychology, like talking about psychology, like I'm now, I guess, at the point where I could be watching a match and I could see something. I'd be like, well, why'd you do that? And that makes no sense. Like being taught in a sense of stuff like that, it gives you being able to, I guess, see something on TV and being able to question it. I guess I won't say means I'm the greatest wrestler, but it means it gives me more in the sense of that I understand what I'm talking about with the psychology and whatnot.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes us like almost like by us having a little bit more understanding, you're able to pull back the curtain a little bit when you're watching those bigger shows that are like and then you can appreciate certain aspects of it differently than you maybe did before, and then other things you kind of almost you don't appreciate anymore because you kind of see it as being like shallow or two-dimensional and not as maybe whether it's athletic or not, is it also becomes like people you start to wonder what the point to some of the things they're doing are. And I don't know if everybody here saw AEW's All In, but I was really invested in that casket match with Sting and everything, and like the one part of it that I was watching, because this is like, again, it's this translation of like what you're seeing to self, and it's like Sting's got this partner that's like doing all this high flying heavy impact stuff, moving very fast. Not to say that Sting can't do these things himself, but he's also like a little older and therefore probably shouldn't be doing these things himself. And that pairing,
I think we can. I'm not trying to cut you off, but I think we can all agree on that sentiment that Sting probably shouldn't be doing this anymore.
Especially after that table shot to the teeth like last month.
Oh, but me watching it, I was just like this. It felt like how like Tommy is able to do all these things that I can't do, but I'm able to bring a certain amount of presence that he can't bring. And it's just that complement of the dynamics. All of a sudden I get more invested in watching it because all of a sudden I'm witnessing it and saying, oh, this could be stuff that we could do, because I'm witnessing, Sting's limitations could be like mine. And I'm saying like that being like, he's like a much better athlete than I am. He's 20 years older than I am, and he's still a better athlete than I am now. So I'm not comparing us. I'm just saying it's inspiration that I get from it. Right. So yeah, I definitely don't want your listeners to suddenly get angry about me saying anything negative about Sting. I'm not. I think he's amazing.
The great thing about this show and our network in itself is you're allowed to express yourself how you will. Nobody's gonna, in the words of Will Gray, yuck your yum. We believe in free speech, and I'll shit on Sting all day because I don't like him. So
yeah, that he said that wasn't me.
But that's a different conversation for a different day, because I was about to say, I feel like we're about to open up a can of worms here.
I feel like this question is more heavily favored towards Rusty, and I apologize, Tommy. Because you're more recency into the wrestling itself. But if you're styling your character out of the recent wrestlers, and I say it like this because I'm giving Tommy a chance to answer. If you're to give yourself a styling of current wrestlers within this last 15 years, who would you like to compare yourself to? And by that, I mean like guys like whoever you want it to be, whether it be AEW, NWA, WWE, like if you could narrow down who you try to mimic, I guess, out of the current product.
And Tommy, do you have anybody you think of off the top of your head?
Well, there's a few people actually. There's obviously I take a lot of Rey Mysterio stuff. Whether or not it's the drop toe hold, the 619, I call it the 705. Even just like I watch back a lot of like Rey Mysterio's matches with Eddie Guerrero. Just the stuff he does with him is just like interstellar. It's just amazing. So to be able to like, I take a lot of that and I try to use it in a sense in my matches. Maybe not steal it, but maybe polish it up and put a new face on it type deal.
I like that.
That's good. It's interesting. I think about Mark Henry a little bit, because I liked the way he moved as a big guy. Is that further back than 15 years though? That might be.
That's within. You're good.
Yeah. All right. Because I think about I really liked how he moved. I think about I like some of the energy that I got from Brock Lesnar. Not that, you know, he's the nicest guy in the world, but I also think I put my own, you know, touch on things. I feel like as a tag team, Tommy and I are like Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, except like just much more fun. And maybe as a personality, you know, I instead of Luchasaurus kind of being like, he has a very different wrestling style, but we do, you know, Tommy does ride out to the ring on my shoulders, and we're making this this backpack right now that I'll be wearing that, you know, is like we're gonna call it like, yeah, we're gonna call it the treehouse, that, you know, he'll like be able to ride more like as if it's like a mounted thing, that way he can jump on and off of
Stand
it
on
as
his
we're
back.
walking. Yeah,
That's
so
actually
it's
super dope.
I can't wait to see this.
Yeah.
yeah. And in the end, like, you see the through line is really just us trying to have fun and it, you know, bring fun into the ring. And even, I mean, when I say that, it's so funny because it's like we've got these design students that we're working with on this coloring book right now for us.
Oh yeah.
And the coloring book story is like about, you know, our adventures in wrestling and me kind of being mean and meeting Tommy and, you know, learning about being friends. And then Bane is this complete jerk to us, and I get in the ring, and in the coloring book I lose just like I did in Durham, but it's okay because our friends still care about us. So it's like this whole story about like how kind of like losing is okay, and you know, just have fun and keep your friends close. You know, we'll win though. We do win matches. I'm just saying that. I don't only want to lose.
Losing is, it's okay to lose, and that's coming from a guy who's lost 13 matches and won 3.
Hey, you got to start somewhere, right? And I mean, you got to pay your. I'm gonna steal a show name on the network here for a second, but you got to be paying your dues. You know.
Yeah.
I don't want to bring this up in a sense of being all depressive and stuff, but when I asked you that question in my head, I asked there for a reason, to see if you would kind of connect where I was going. I look at the Butcher character that you've developed in conversating with you. I mean, I've known you almost 2 years at this point. And I told Tommy before that I think his style is Tyler Black. I'm not saying Seth Rollins, because there's still a lot to go for him to get there. But Tyler Black is definitely where I see Tommy. With you, and maybe this is just the look, but I see more of a Wyndham Rotunda Bray Wyatt, who we just lost. And that's why I said I didn't want to hit that depressive note. I wanted to see if you would hit me with that energy without kind of hitting that word. But I see a lot of that, because I see what you're trying to do in the ring. I see how he was in his early stages. And there's very comparable things.
Well, I appreciate that very much. It's an honor to be compared in that way. And yeah, I mean, that's somebody else who I think brought a lot of all kinds of different energy to the ring, but it was always trying to like bring the most, how do I say it, like the most fantastic stories out, right? Like, and all over the spectrum, like scary and fun and everything. Like, I mean, yeah. Thank you. That's all I think I can really say is just thank you for that. I mean, and I know that, you know, Bray's loss it's impacted on so many people at such a high level. Like, it's hard to add much to that story other than you know, thank you, Shadow. It's an unbelievable honor to be put into that spectrum over there. So thank you.
I'll flip the script to go a little bit more of Dan and when I had a conversation, we had Dan on the show before. I've asked about you because I said to him straight up, I had interviewed Bane, but Bane was coming up when I interviewed Dan. And you guys were coming up as well. I asked Dan about both of you because that's what I do. Dan said, you know, Rusty, very, and no lie, you guys can go back and watch this for yourselves. Very green, but very willing to learn. And he loved that. And with Tommy, and I think I'm not going to use the exact words maybe, but he needs to slow down and
What was it he
take
said?
in.
I got a squirrel in the brain and something up the
Yeah,
up
it was
the
something
eye.
along the lines of that. And I tried to get Dan to put himself over, and I said this to Josh as well, and I've said it, and I think it's important that he does. But to me, from in conversations I've had with him, he's very humble. That won't do it. You know, he's very much out there putting over you guys, which is great as a teacher. That's what you want to hear. I'm right, but I need to ask, because we're at this part of the segment now where I want to say, I wanted you guys to put over Dan, because I think he doesn't do it himself. So I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on.
Tommy, do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
You could start.
So I mean, there's like Dan as a person within the community. There's Dan as a trainer within Energy Y, and then there's sort of Dan as a wrestler, and those are all like these huge forces. And I'll start with the training, because I think the training is the kind of the one that's like the foundation for our relationship. I mean, Dan and I actually met 20 years ago or more, because when I was in my 20s, I reffed for a while when I weighed 200 pounds less than I do now, and I reffed for Northern Wrestling Federation, Chris Thorne's company that he was running, and I did that for about a year or so, and then I got a job, and I couldn't really keep up, but I met him at that time, and we didn't even, when I started training in the wrestling, neither of us were clued in on who each other were for like 6 months. It was so weird, because both of us had changed. It's 20 something years ago. But reason why I'm bringing up the training so much is that just like how we were talking earlier about, getting our gimmicks set and getting our names in place, is that although you're going there to learn how to wrestle, I feel like Dan takes a personal interest in the success of the people he works with, and at a level that's like probably beyond what other people are prepared to do when they get involved with training. I really do feel like he listens to my constraints, listens to what I need, and tries to make offerings back and see where it can go. And that's like, I just can't imagine how, like when I first came into training, I said I wanted to be a manager. I didn't think I was physically capable of wrestling. And, he has it set up in a way that people can try from all physical body types or skill sets. And there's just like, I broke my neck playing football in high school. So, I have a physical restriction, where I've had C2, which is the vertebrae right in the back of my neck, like completely destroyed to the point that I had to have a piece of my hip taken out and like refashioned into like a new vertebrae. So I have my hip in the back of my neck, which is so weird. But with all of that, getting me to the point that I could actually do matches and handle myself well enough, was like, starting so far behind other people that are, like in their 20s and like, physically agile or capable. But so I'm super honored to be part of that. And then, outside of that, I watch him contribute to the community and get active, with his family, going to sports events, getting involved with other charity events and promoting things. And then Northland and Dan are almost like, I don't think you can have one without the other anymore. Like he's just the heart and soul of the whole thing. I'm going to put him over a bit as a wrestler. And I will say, Shadow, you were at that event where he had that head injury and there was blood everywhere and it was terrible. And he got up and left the gurney while the paramedics were trying to get him in the ambulance and went to the back to make sure everybody got paid.
He was telling me this.
Got back in the ambulance. And it was surreal to watch, like to be in the back and all of a sudden he comes in and he's making sure, he's like, is that everyone got paid? And I'm like, did they let you go? He's like, no, I made them wait. And I'm like, what? Like make the ambulance wait for him, like pay everyone. He's amazing in that way. But tough as nails. I've never met a human being as tough as Dan Jarrus in the ring. It's kind of unbelievable. I've never seen someone throw a punch as hard as he can. I've never seen somebody give it such a 110% kind of level, or 200%. Like the thing is, like, people can discount him because he's not the tallest or heaviest or strongest guy or fastest or whatever. But it's like that. If I had to have a match with Dan Jarrus, I wouldn't take that lightly. That would be like one of the biggest threats that I've ever had in my life. Like that'd be like 30 or 40 Banes. And I lost to Bane, so I don't know how that match with Dan would go. But Tommy, maybe you could save me a bit here from making a fool of myself.
Well, Rusty's got a point with there being like different, not really versions of Dan's, but different sides of Dan. Like, there's like the personal side of the Dan, and to get like sort of personal odds. I lost someone last December, and Dan was constantly messaging me every day, like seeing like if I was okay, like how are you today? But basically, just he was constantly messaging me, seeing how I was, and like the entire class was too. But I specifically, before that, I feel like I won't say I thought Dan hated me, but Dan was like the coach. Is that he's gonna yell at me if I mess up, and I mess up a lot, so that was a lot. So to go from this like, not say angry side of Dan, but this more aggressive side of Dan that I see a lot, to completely like flip the switch, to have him like messaging me, asking him if I'm okay, if I need anything almost every day. It was, I won't say weird, but it was like a fresh breath of Dan. And but even in the sense of Northland being like the booker and the promoter, Northland's his baby. Like, there has not been a show where I won't say he's been mean, but he has not been stressed about how it could be. There's always someone's getting a stern talking to for doing something. And it's I appreciate it. I don't think that's how any other company works. It's because Dan wants it picture perfect. Because Northland is his, that's how he wants it. And then there's like the wrestling side of Dan. I won't say I didn't meet it until I got into the ring with him, but like I was tired within like 5 minutes, and Dan's like still running around, throwing me around. He's pure ruthless aggression when he's in there. He's yelling at me. Dan's fire when he's in there. There's completely 100% three different sides of Dan, and it's cool to be able to see, and it's awesome to be able to know all three of them. All three sides of Dan.
Well, and I know we say like yelling or mean, but it's funny because it's less like it's less mean and more like caring at such a level that the commitment was so high. I
was going to say that. It's like Dan wants nothing but the best for the people in his class, right? And he knows the way to do that is to like he's gonna he's going to be tough on you, because that's the best way to do it, right? If you're going to baby someone, you're going to end up with crappy wrestlers. Yeah. And Dan, if there's something wrong, he will nitpick the smallest thing when it comes to our wrestling. And that's because he cares about how we look in the future, right? So even to this day, like I've advanced more on stuff, right? And now he's gotten to the point where he's pointing at the small things that we do wrong. And like he cares so much on how we will look and how we do look as a wrestler. And I'm glad to be able to say I have him as a coach more than anyone else.
With my conversations previous with Dan, and I've had conversations off air too with him, because I nitpick his brain a little bit. He's always open to a conversation, which for someone that what I do, I mean, I enjoy, because it kind of gives me a little inside information, not towards Northlands, just in wrestling in general. He won't disclose anything Northlands. I tried after the event. He's like, nah. I'm like, damn.
I don't even know half the stuff.
I was like, I had to try. He's like, I get it. But he and we talked about this. He's very old school, but not afraid to accept that he's doing something maybe wrong, to retrain and do stuff. But he's got that old school mentality, but he's not afraid to accept new tricks.
Exactly. Sorry to cut you off, but there was in training when we first began. He had taught us when we we're running the ropes. He want us, I think, to throw our arms or one of our arms over the rope. And I think Jimmy Garvin came in one day and told us, no, that was not it. Sorry, that's completely wrong. I think it was slapping the mat when we took our bumps. It was to make more noise or whatever when we hit. But Jimmy Garvin, he was like, oh, "What are you doing?" That just I don't know the exact words, but he basically told Dan it shouldn't be like that. And Dan at that point basically up and told everyone else we're not doing it that way anymore. And it does prove his ability to take not criticism but take change into consideration.
Well, it was
Sorry, I had to get a charger for this.
when you hit the mat and you throw your arms out, a lot of people will say like it's to help you dissipate the impact. It's not it's not like making noise as much as
Oh,
trying
whatever it was, yeah. I don't do it
But-
because Dan told me not to.
what Jimmy was saying is that when you put your arms back, like basically over time, you're going to start developing
Oh,
this
yeah.
huge callus, and then your joints start going inside the same as your knees do, except it's your arms. And he said if you can save your elbows, you should be. And it's one of those things being like everybody does things differently somewhere else. But yeah, I agree. Like that idea of like if somebody comes in and they've been doing this for how long, and they've got an opinion, you should at least hear them out.
Yeah, he's not going to sit there and tell them. He's not going to go tell the Hall of Famer he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I heard he's a big fan, and I mean a big fan of thigh slapping.
yeah, he loves that.
Yeah, I heard he loves it. But and I appreciate the conversation about Dan. So coming up, we have a showcase event, Rusty, and Tommy. Now, Rusty, you were saying you didn't have. Are you going to be on the showcase, or that you know of?
Yeah.
And Tommy,
Yeah. I mean,
Yes, I'm going to be.
I don't think we're supposed to say who we're going against yet, but I will say, there was a conversation we were having about indie wrestling and territory wrestling and these kind of subtle differences and how they're the same thing in some ways, but we were talking about it going like the old territories were like when you're in a territory, there's a continuity of the story between the shows, right?
Right.
And the big difference when you go into indie wrestling is like, you could take a group and go on the road, and that's like the same exact matches almost every night in each town. Like they're not really caring who wins or loses. It's really more like that night, that's a self-contained thing. This group's in town, and none of the fans are really aware of the feuding that's going on or the wrestlers hating each other or not. It's really just whatever is presented that night. And that made us realize how much more Northland runs like a territory, because there is this continuity between the characters and the stories. And, when somebody's mad at somebody, it kind of gets resolved. And in fact, there was a whole thing that took place last year, for instance, that Miles Morgan, who now manages wrestlers, was wrestling and was supposed to have a match with me. And, little do I know that he's also a relatively successful actor, and he got booked on some movie and was gone. And all of a sudden I got robbed of a match that we were supposed to have. And now he's managing instead of wrestling. But he talked in passing about like coming back and maybe he'll get in the ring and wrestle, and he could go against so-and-so. I'm like, no, you're not. I still have like a indentation on the top of my head from taking like a DDT on a bar room in like a restaurant from you. And, if you set one foot in that ring, like I'm the first match you're having. I don't care when you come back. I'll come out of retirement 30 years from now to get even on that. So like that idea of like taking it seriously and treating it that way. And there's negotiation and everything like that. But anyway, I think that what's interesting about the showcases is because they're more focused on locals, is that you kind of get all the stories that may or may not be able to happen at the Northland shows kind of manifest, where it's all like, this is just all the guys that work more closely together. Right. So it might actually be in some ways more more complicated and ridiculous, but it'll be fun no matter what. Tommy, do we even know where the venue is for that? Are we going to
The next show?
Yeah.
I think St. Andrew's Church. I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. I do apologize if I was insinuating I wanted to know your opponents. I just wanted to ask if you guys were on the card. I know that there's some stuff you got to be quiet about, and I understand that.
Yeah.
Yes, we're on the card. Short answer, yes, we are.
So I've had this conversation a little bit with Rusty, and I want to touch about it on the pod as well. But Tommy, first and foremost, because I already know the answer with Rusty, can you ever see yourself as a heel?
Yes, yeah, I think I can. I don't want to say I run the scenarios through my mind, but I run the scenarios through my mind and how it could happen, and I think it'd be cool to be able to try that persona or try that personality out. Whether or not it's a one-time deal or I don't know if it works out in a way where it permanently happens. I'm willing to do it, but I think for now it'd be cool to just stay face, because eventually when it happens, I want it to be a big, like, oh my god, I want it to the burn. So I think eventually I do want that that is my plan eventually, but how soon in the future is I don't know yet.
One more question to that before I go into Rusty with this. Do you keep the Tommy McCloud persona, or do you switch it up to a really badass heel persona?
See, I've always thought if I did it, I'd call myself Tommy McCloud, and I'd call people stupid for pronouncing my name wrong the entire time.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
So, Rusty, me and you touched a little bit on this subject. Not very much, because I wanted it to be authentic for the show. Now, I already know you have a heel persona. So, do you want to elaborate to the audience of that heel persona?
Well, I won't get into the persona too much, but I will. So, like, here's I actually have like a whole nother character that is like a secret that I do, and I won't get into that. But in addition to that, Rusty has healed before, and I struggle with this because sometimes you get booked and people tell you when you get there, oh, we need you to work heel tonight. You're already there, and you're like, oh, okay. And then I've talked about how to go about this, and really good advice that I got from a few people is like, you don't have to be an asshole. You just have to not be nice. Like, you can go out there and be grouchy, and there's a real easy grouchy version of Rusty that's kind of like doesn't want to be there. It's kind of ticked off. People aren't being nice to him, so he's kind of crabby and responding that way. And then I'll get in and do my work, but it's all from this perspective of kind of being a little angry. And the thing is, it's like when you're a bigger guy with a whole bunch of facial hair, it's really easy to turn that switch from threatening to like menacing, right? Like, where it's like, when Tommy and I have had matches and we're face, and suddenly someone's like kept Tommy in the ring, he's getting all this heat, he's getting beat up, I can't get in, they walk over, they smack me in the face, and I like lose it. I lose it and get in the ring, and the ref's like forcing me back out, and all of a sudden, finally you tag me and I get in there. That's kind of like what everyone's seeing at this part of like this explosive kind of ticked off Rusty. I just kind of tap into that a little more when I'm doing heel work, and just kind of go to that place relatively early, and it helps. But working both sides of things, it's like, like I always like, if it'd be so strange, Tommy, if you were there while I was asked to do that, because then I'd just be like, well, I'd almost be like upset because my best friend's watching me be a bad person. I like doing face work so much more. And then this whole like having multiple personalities and wearing masks and going in and doing that, like that stuff's it's fun, but it's also like it really it really kind of starts to tap into like various aspects of your personality that you have. Like I've even talked about like to try to keep Rusty from doing heel work, that I would like wear an eye patch and be like my own cousin, and just be like Dusty Blackwell, you know, and I haven't done it, but I might, you know, because in the end, it's like I totally created like another gimmick that had like, you know, a morph suit and like a full mask and all this stuff just to make it that I could, if someone's asking me to heel, I could heel. And then they said, oh, okay, well, I want you to heel wearing that outfit and heel as Rusty today and go work twice. And I'm like, this is all backfiring against me here. But, you know, when you go and you work for people on the road, what you find is a lot of people, they've kind of got a lot of their hero faces anchored, and that it's not normal for them to have like, I've got a roster full of heels and I'm looking for people to come and be heroes here for one day and then leave. They've got their heroes and they're looking for random threats to come and challenge them and make their heroes look good. And that seems to be what I'm experiencing more, you know, anyway. And everyone's like a 360-pound dude coming in that's 6'2". Everyone's like, oh, you're going to make my guy look really good. That's what happens.
Will, am I losing connection? Do you have any questions? I'm about to go into my final segment. Do you have any questions before I do that?
Rusty, down here in the South, some of the boys like to say it's easier to get them to hate you than it is to love you. Even with, you know, you have a preference, but do you think it's easier to get them to hate you than it is to get them to love you?
I think, I guess it depends on what you're looking for. You know, like people refer to like cheap heat, you know, like how you can, you know, walk out there and tell some kid that his mom sucks, and all of a sudden everyone's like, how dare you say that about somebody's mom, you know? And it's so easy to do that. But, you know, if you really care about your audience and you really show some like genuine affection, and you know, like Tommy and I will go out to a show or like a festival or a fairground, and we'll just walk out, and if we see, you know, kids around, you know, specifically kids, because I think that, you know, grown-ups, they're fine, but they don't want to be like, you know, they want to see whether you're going to be a good wrestler or not before they're going to invest in you. So like random people that are going to wrestle trying to introduce themselves to grown-ups is a little like, they're like, oh yeah, so you're going to wrestle, and they kind of don't care. But kids being like, hey, you know, I've got this business card and it's got my picture on it. If you come to the show and you just cheer, I'll sign it right now and I'll let you have it. And it's just this little thing. But like having grown-ups talk to kids, you know, with their parents present and with their parents' permission, like obviously, having them make that direct connection, like the response we've had from audiences has been like overwhelming, you know, because it's just that little bit of effort to like be like, you know, we just, and you know, we at first we used to say, could you come and cheer for us, like we're going to be in a Royal Rumble or something, but then over time we just came and said, like, we just want you to cheer, because a lot of younger kids, they may not realize that it's actually encouraged for you to make noise, right? Like there's this whole thing of like, you know, you go to school and like you're not supposed to be yelling at the stuff you're seeing. You're supposed to be like responding well behaved, and this is a place where you can be loud and it's supported, right? And even then, it's not all kids are going to do it, but there have been times where doing that and just being genuine, like I've had, oh man, we had a show at Capriel Days in Sudbury, and we lost the match. And the kids from Capriel, which is it's outside of Sudbury there, the kids had remembered us from the year before, and they'd come out and they were like, we came out, and they're cheering our names like before we came out. And I was just like, what's happening? And then I saw them and I'm like, oh, they all look like, you know, it went from this tall to like this tall. Right? Like they're all taller, and I could kind of recognize some of them, like, oh, this is so weird. We have fans. And then we lost, and I was on the outside of the ring, and you know, I went to the audience and I said, I'm so sorry. And then they're like, it's okay, Rusty. It's okay. You're gonna be okay, Rusty. And they had like 40 kids like just hugging me. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry that I lost, but that happened. And I was just like, wow, you're just not going to get that kind of audience interaction when you're a heel. And I don't know how much I'm going to enjoy having people see, like I've been in like the mall and had people recognize me and like, cheer or say things. I don't know if I want kids like throwing stuff at me in public if I'm healing, like booing you when you're parking your car at the or going to the gas station. You're pumping gas and some kid throws an egg and they're like, leave so and so alone, like I don't know. Anyway, sorry, yeah, that was a long answer to a short question, but yeah, I think it is easier, but I think that being a face does have really, really cool rewards. Yeah.
Can I add to that? I've never worked heel, but I've always had like the theory that it's got to be like super easy to just be hated. Like I did it so much growing up, it comes natural to me, I guess, right? But no, it's you could go out there and being a good guy, right? You have to, or being a face, you have to connect with the fans, and you have to make yourself likable. But you can't try too hard, or you become a kiss ass, right? And being a heel, you just go out there, you put some kid's hat off, take a balloon, pop it, and everyone hates you. I won't say I've never worked it, right? But I won't say being the heel is easiest. But like you said, I think it is easier to be hated than to be liked. If I think that's not the exact words you said, or even close to what you said, but I think it was along those lines.
You pretty much got it.
Yeah, I mean, there's another side of this that we've spent most of our time doing face work, so it's hard for us to know about the perfections of heel work, and I mean, some of the best heels that I've seen are the ones that are not taking the cheap road. They're the ones that are like, they're more about not giving the audience what they want and controlling the match in a way that is displeasing, and like things like taking someone on a two pin, or like on letting them 1-2 and then getting off the person and just staring at the audience, and then they go walk to the edge of the ring, climb out of the ring, leave, go home, and they're like, what? And like, yeah, they just got disqualified. And the audience like hates them, and I'm like, yeah, of course they hate them. That was a terrible ending to that match. But there's a psychology there of like, I can't believe how much the audience is going to hate you. Like they're going to really hate you because of what you're not doing, which is giving them the show they want to see. So there's lots of psychology to it that I think that when it's done very well, it can be maybe rewarding as well. I'm not sure. Yeah. But for me, I love that interaction. And maybe there is a part of me too. Like I have 4 children. My youngest is 16. So also like that idea of like just having this positive interaction with kids. I miss it. I miss being a dad of 4 kids and having them all running around and being little. And I don't get to be everybody's dad, but I do get to have like a positive interaction with children, which I think is that to me is also part of the reason why being a face is so fun for me. Yeah. So that's a little inner monologue, but there you go.
Oh yeah, it was a great answer. So I'm going to lead into my last segment before we wrap up. We'll go Tommy first, and then Rusty go. Where do you see your career within the next 5 years? Now you don't have to give me a whole 5-year plan, but where do you see yourself?
Starting tomorrow. Just kidding. No, I don't know. I don't know exactly where I see myself, but I know places I would potentially like to be. Because this Sunday, a bunch of the people from the class are going down to Windsor to participate in I think it's Impact. It's not really a tryout, but it's to get your get yourself seen type thing. It's a bunch of like Impact people, and I think there's a good start in my mind. And I don't know, within the next 2 years, I'd like to maybe see myself as like like the face, the nameless individuals on like Raw or Impact getting beat up as security or whatever. I'd like to potentially. I won't say that's a realistic goal for me, but it's a dream goal of mine in the next 3-4 years to at least have something like that. And I don't know. Currently, I think I want to start getting my name out more around the indie scene. I've started to do that a lot more now, messaging companies. So I think that's a start. But yeah, I think within the next few years, I will want to at least be seen on something televised.
Fair.
Like I think that's a great ambition. I'd love to help in any way to get Tommy televised. I have a little less ambition just because I've been around. I don't think a lot of the bigger companies are looking for a guy in his 40s to break out. But who knows? I'm not going to rule it out. I am going to take every opportunity I can to get ring time over the next few years because I really just want to. It's not as much about getting more opportunities as it is. I want to build up street cred so that if I'm going to do jobber work here at Northland moving forward, I can, and people won't really challenge me saying, oh, well, you're just some guy local. I'm like, well, yeah, but I've also wrestled all over, and now I only wrestle local and I pick my battles. And I mean, again, that whole Iron Mike Sharp thing, like I would be honored to be the guy that gives people their first match when they're working in Northland. That would be great for me. And then ambition wise, I think, the Butcher and the Kid at some point or another are going to have to take a crack at those tag team titles in Northland too, because like we haven't had that chance, not at all. And I know that like right now, like Scotty the Body and Jake O'Reilly have those belts, and they're a couple of great guys, and I don't see us moving that way, but who knows who's going to have them in the future. And even just getting a shot at them and putting ourselves forward, I think that could be really fun and valuable. And then, like maybe 5 years, I'll be almost 50. So, probably looking at doing less matches and probably a lot more managing and a lot more FaceTime and whatever, Tommy, you know how it goes. I'm a huge fat guy that's getting old. Like, what do you want from me? Like not everyone can be Sting and continue to work into your 60s. Okay. Like,
don't get us started on Sting. We already talked about this.
Well, and I'm a big fan of a lot of the guys that did these huge retirement matches as well, and that are athletes, right? And the key aspect to some of that stuff too is, when you've got like a major production like AEW or WWE behind you that's been supporting you with trainers and like steroids or whatever the hell it is, and then you're like, oh, I can do this. I'm like, yeah, you can do it. I'm like just a dude in Northern Ontario. Like I can't do it. I don't have those supports. So, basically I'm going to get as much as I can out of the next 5 years, assess things, be realistic, and then continue to support and love wrestling in whatever capacity makes sense for me physically. Yeah.
Well, if you both make it to getting beat up on AEW television first, we had you here first. So I'm going to take that.
Exactly.
I'm gonna steal a little snippet out of Will Gray's book. I love you, Will. But is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh dear, my Tommy, you want to aim at that one? I'm gonna say no as my response.
I think it's more like, what do you consider a taco?
It's like saying a taco is a sandwich, but then
I consider it a taco. That's
yeah.
I mean, a taco is considered a wrap.
Is it? A wrap. It's a pork wrap.
I think a hot dog is like over on its own category. Is a taco.
Sorry,
I would argue that a wrap is a taco because tacos have been around a hell of a lot longer than wraps.
Fair.
You heard it here, folks. A hot dog is a taco.
With that being said, Rusty, Tommy, thank you for coming in today. I appreciate the interview with you. I want to do this again a little bit down the road. You guys have some more coming up. So with that being said, what I usually do to end the show, and I want you guys to go ahead, each take a minute or two and promote the shit out of yourselves for upcoming events and stuff. So we'll start off with Tommy, close with Rusty.
Follow me on Instagram, Tommy McCloud Wrestling. Follow me on Facebook, Tommy McCloud Wrestling. Visit Northland Wrestling at northlandwrestling.com. Next match, I don't know the exact date, but stay tuned to Northland Wrestling's Facebook page and you'll find out further details.
That was awesome. Do everything that he just said. And in addition to that, Shadow will send you info. We're going to do like a Kickstarter next month. I'm wearing one of the new Rusty shirts that just got done. And Tommy's wearing one of the new Butcher and the Kid shirts. We're hoping to have our coloring books as well as our we got like wrestling buddies made. Like, whoa, cool. We got a whole bunch of new merch. So we're gonna do an online campaign to kind of push that up and see what happens and just raise awareness of it. And we'll send you guys a bunch of swag too because you've been such awesome. We'd love to send
within the next 6 months I'll have a Tommy McCloud and Rusty Blackwell Lego set for purchase. I've been working on
gosh, I can't believe that. That's gonna be so weird.
I want to be like that. I want to be
no
that guy
professional wrestling Lego that exists.
I want people to just be like, wow, this is just really unique merch. That's what I'm going for here.
I love it.
Best way to start.
I absolutely love it. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Spotlight with Shadow. I have the gracious enough to have Will Gray as my co-host today, which I'm thankful for, sir. And to Tommy and Rusty, I appreciate the time. You guys are busy men, so thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah! Woo!